Hello and welcome back to my channel. My name is David Novak. I am going to show you a bunch of books pertaining to the Second World War. I'm not sure that there will be any rhyme or reason to it. I am not particularly a scholar of the time period. Recently I have read a number of books which are World War II relevant. So in thinking about this video, I went through my various cubby holes and warrens and pulled out the books which immediately jumped out at me as pertain to the Second World War. I grew up in the shadow of the war. My parents both lived through the war. They were children, but it left a great impression on both of them. Both of my uncles fought in the war, and at least one of them told tales of his experiences. Recently, I have started to read Marc Bloch, Strange Defeat. It's a book that I did not really know existed until recently. Marc Bloch is not a favored historian of mine, but he is principally known as a historian. He wrote a book titled The Historian's Craft, which I've looked at. I'm not sure how much I've read, but I don't particularly care for his writing. However, in the case of Strange Defeat, I am enjoying this book. I decided to read it because today in the United States of America, I have been dipping my toes into the resistance of the current fascist regime we have. We have ICE agents penetrating our city here in the city of Chicago and kidnapping people, sending them to foreign gulags, expatriating them in various ways, unaliving them sometimes, as the phrase goes now, that is to say, killing them. And as far as the extent, as far as the total picture, we really can't say what it will look like to the eyes of posterity, but it certainly can be said that it will not be good. And Marc Bloch was known for his resistance work. Now, this book deals with the fall of France in 1940, I think. It was written in 1940, after which time he joined the resistance for about 4 years, I think, and was executed in 1944, before the war ended. But this book is turning out to be more meaningful to me than I might have expected. And just as a way of digression, let me say, recently in a video, Steve Donahue happened to say that if you really want to learn a subject, one of the best ways to do so is to just go and pick out 3 books on the subject and read them. And I think it sounds like a very good methodology. I myself do not have the requisite reading skills. The thought of pulling out 3 books on any subject is apt to blow me to smithereens, but I think it's a good method. And I realized that I do have, with this, I now have a triad of books about what it feels like, or what it felt like, to be living during the course of the war. The first 2 are books that have been more important to me, and so this is the third, the latecomer, it remains to see what sort of lasting impression it will leave with me, but I think so far it's holding its weight fairly well with the other books. So, a book that I have loved for many, many years is The Story of a Secret State. This is by Jan Karski. I don't know if you can see that. You probably can't. Let me open the book up. The Story of a Secret State, Jan Karski. This, also from 1944, is my precious copy of this book. It is written by a Polish spy and recounts his adventures actually from the very first invasion of Poland by the Nazi army. And then it takes him through a final mission. He was sent to Europe to try to impress upon the Allies the severity of what was happening, particularly to the Jewish population in the concentration camps, but he had other objectives there as well. Since I read it, the book has come out in a later edition, which I picked up just because I wanted to read what was said more recently. It has a foreword by Madeleine Albright. Let's see if there's anything good here. Well, let me just read Karski's own preface to you. I do not pretend to have given an exhaustive picture of the Polish underground, its organization, and its activities. Because of our methods, I believe there is no one today who could give an all-embracing recital. This would be possible only some years after the war with the aid of information yet to be gathered and checked. This book is a purely personal story, my story. I have tried to recall everything I experienced, to tell all about my own activities, and to recount the deeds of all those with whom I had actual contact. Poland's underground state, to which I belonged, was under the authority of the Polish government in London. I know that besides this organization, there were other elements carrying on their activities under the direction or the influence of Moscow. Because of my sincere intention to describe only my personal experiences, their activities could not properly be included in this book. Being the first active member of the Polish underground in the fortunate position to publish some aspects of its story, I hope that it will encourage others to relate their experiences, and that out of such narratives, the free peoples all over the world will be able to form an objective opinion as to how the Polish people reacted during the years of German conquest. So it's written in 1944. So it, as this, is a first-person account and reporting the facts while they were still fresh. So it's not a long time after reflection upon the events. And the third book that I will include in my triad is another book of that sort. It has been published as The Pianist by Wladyslaw Szpilman. This was made into a fairly decent movie by Roman Polanski, I believe, but after I saw the movie, I thought I ought to read the book, and I've read the book a couple of times, and at this point, I am sure that I would prefer the book to the movie. I don't know what the original title would have been. I'm sure something here will say. First published, well, it doesn't say, but I'm sure he would not have called it The Pianist. Let me read a little bit of what. Well, I think the foreword here is by his son. But I think this was written also at the time. Let's see what it says. Well, I'm not going to dig for it. Until a few years ago, my father never spoke of his wartime experiences, yet they had been my companions since childhood. Through this book, which I surreptitiously took from a corner of our bookshelves when I was 12 years old, I discovered why I had no paternal grandparents and why my father never talked about his family. The book revealed a part of my own identity to me. I knew he knew I had read it, but we never discussed it, and perhaps for that reason it never struck me that the book could be of any significance to other people, something pointed out by my friend Wolf Bierman when I told him my father's story. Let's see how Szpilman himself begins. The book starts, I began my wartime career as a pianist in the Cafe Nowoczesna, which was in Nowalpiki Street in the very heart of the Warsaw Ghetto. By the time the gates of the ghetto closed in November 1940, my family had sold everything we could sell long ago, even our most precious household possession, the piano. Life, although so unimportant, had nonetheless forced me to overcome my apathy and seek some way of earning a living, and I had found one, thank God. The work left me little time for brooding, and my awareness that the whole family depended on what I could earn gradually helped me to overcome my previous state of hopelessness and despair. So he begins with an account of his working life, and then, as he says, the walls of the ghetto close around, the deportations begin. And he ultimately goes into hiding. And it's a very harrowing experience, a first-person narrative of survival. So I think that these three books are a good starting point for first-person narratives of what it felt like to be living through the Second World War. I've read other things. I've read other Holocaust accounts. Of course, I've read Night by Elie Wiesel. I think something like that is how you say his name. My understanding that this novel is not 100% autobiographical, but it is riveting and harrowing, and when you have read it, the images will never leave you. So it is a great book, and probably where most of us start, along with The Diary of a Young Girl, written by Anne Frank. I read that in school, I believe, and I may have read this one for a class as well. That one in probably 7th or 8th grade, this one in a class that I had in college. My understanding is that this man turned out to be not a very good man, but I have lost any recollection of what his misdeeds were. So I'm just kind of showing some of the things that I've read. As I say, I'm not an exhaustive scholar of the period by any means. Another book, this though a history book, which meant a lot to me in its day, was Shattering the German Knight. And here are the two authors. It is about the White Rose Society. It is suspected, perhaps, that the society got its name from the great B. Traven novel, but there's no proof one way or another on that. And this book has been reissued with, I think, an introduction by Studs Terkel or somebody, and other added material. And if I ever see it, I will pick it up. But I preferred this original edition because I think the title is great. The cover is great. All about this band of students and some others who printed flyers and distributed them to the German population and were executed for their efforts. It was rebranded under the title of Sophie Scholl. I can't remember the new name. I would hope that when the rush of enthusiasm for a young female heroine wears off, it will go back to its original title. There was a movie that came out, and so forth. But this is strictly speaking a history book, but it's a very, very good introduction to the topic. So I'm just picking things out here and there. The cat is going kind of goofy, which if you have cats, you know. Fairly recently, I read an account of a Polish chap who worked in the camps. I think Auschwitz, possibly. Published. Well, what does it say? Yeah, Borowski's Auschwitz Stories. It's a worthwhile book to read. Essentially, there is one long essay which starts the book, and which is very good, and then the rest is kind of filler a little bit. But it's something that I read not all that long ago and enjoyed. Everything that you read does add something to the picture. As I say, what I really like about these so far is that they are first-person narratives written immediately in the wake of the experiences described, and they form cohesive and relatively complete works of themselves. This book is more sort of patched together. And one may argue that this is a memoir by a person who did not survive, because I think ultimately he took his own life, not immediately. Another book which I read recently was Unknown Soldiers. It's a war novel. I prefer this to the famous World War I war novel, All Quiet on the Western Front, but it's pretty much the same type of story. The characters are very vivid. Perhaps I shouldn't bring a novel into this. Let me hold off on novels and just stick with factual stuff. I pulled out everything, though, and I will ultimately segue into my long-range TBR, which I may never get to. My reading plans for this year have fallen completely apart, and in the time remaining me, it is unclear how much time I will be able to allocate to the Second World War. With my three, I think I've I've got a pretty cohesive picture, but then I have other things I've read that add to it. One of the very earliest books that I read as well was John Hersey's Hiroshima. That's probably also a fairly popular starting point for reading about the war. And I read it because when I was young in Japan, I met a woman whose father figures in this story. And she actually is in there, but the author changed her gender to that of a baby boy instead of a baby girl. And it was my meeting this woman outside of a train station in Hiroshima that ultimately led me to read this. This is not the edition I read it in, but I picked this up a couple of years ago thinking that I would like to read it in light of the greater maturity which I would bring to it now. So, a very, very, very early book which I read that had something to do with the war. I have the original copy. I was a teenager taking a bus trip to Mexico, and buses, Greyhound, they would stop at little stations along the way, not bus stops per se, but like a little general store of sorts. And there was one of those racks that spins around, and it had these cheap paperbacks. And I think it was 25 cents or something. I bought Flight to Arras by Antoine de Saint-Exupéry. I'm not sure how you say it, but Flight to Arras. As I say, I still have my original copy somewhere, but I don't know where it is. This is a really marvelous compilation of 3 of his books. I used to have a beautiful hardback, and a neighbor took it and never returned it, so I eventually rebought it. Let's see how this starts. I should say, my understanding now is that it is not. It is factual, but it tends to compress many different sorties or flying missions into one. So it's a work of art. But it does give you a sense of the period. I feel like over reading it again because there seemed to be some overlap with my Marc Bloch. Surely I must be dreaming. It is as if I were 15 again. I am back at school. My mind is on my geometry problem. Leaning over the worn black desk, I work away dutifully with the compass and ruler and protractor. I am quiet and industrious. Nearby sit some of my schoolmates, talking in murmurs. One of them stands at a blackboard chalking up figures. Others, less studious, are playing bridge. Out of doors, I see the branch of a tree swaying in the breeze. I drop my work and stare at it. From an industrious pupil, I have become an idle one. The shining sun fills me with peace. I inhale with delight the childhood odor of the wooden desk, the chalk, the blackboard in this schoolhouse in which we are quartered. I revel in the sense of security born of this daydream of a sheltered childhood. What course life takes, we all know. We are children, we are sent to school, we make friends, we go to college, and we are graduated. Some sort of diploma is handed to us, and our hearts pound as we are ushered across a certain threshold, marched through a certain porch, the other side of which we are of a sudden grown men. Now our footfalls strike the ground with a new assurance. We have begun to make our way in life, to take the first few steps of our way in life. We are about to measure our strength against real adversaries. The ruler, the T-square, the compass have become weapons with which we shall build a world, triumph over an enemy. Playtime is over. And then it goes on to recount his wartime experience. Flight to Arras, written during the collapse of France before the Luftwaffe, portrays the extraordinary valor of French flyers in the face of certain defeat, as well as the futility and stupidity of war. So that may well have been my very first introduction to any thoughts about the First World War, when I was too young to have any sense of the historical context. As you can tell from those 3 brief paragraphs, his writing is beautiful, and he, of course, was a casualty of the war. I say casualty of the war. I don't believe he was shot down, but he was on some sort of mission and never came back. I don't know if anything more has ever been learned about him. When it comes to actual history books, I've read nothing about the war. When I was young, I came across, and I would peg this as like my first year in high school, freshman year. I came across a book titled Total War. It was 1 volume of 2. This was a mass market paperback. And I recently picked up both of the books because I hope to read this one day. It really has been, I tried reading it as a kid and just couldn't do it. My reading was never strong. My reading is now strong enough. I'm pretty sure that I can get through it if the times cooperate. As I say, the current fascist takeover of our government here in the United States has shattered, to use that word, my reading plans for this year. I think shattering is a great word to describe the change which our present-day fascists are trying to effect. So this, as you can see, it's broken into the Western Hemisphere and the greater East Asia and Pacific conflict. So not knowing anything about it, I would like to read these. This is I think, taking an overview, and I think even Steve mentioned this in his video. This is another way to get some knowledge about a subject, just to take an overview. And I hope to do this one day, but personally, I've always been more in tune with the haphazard method of just picking up what falls into my possession by chance and going with it. So recently I read When Time Stopped. This Ariana Newman was another instance of a person who never talked to her father about his wartime experiences. And so this book is more her personal memoir as she learns about her father. There is a brief excerpt of his writing. He wanted to write a memoir, but never really got through with it for one reason or another. But she reconstructs what happened to him. He was a Jew who was hid in Berlin during the major events of the war. It's not a book that I recommend overly because, as I say, it's more of a daughter's story of reconciliation with her father, who had lived through some terrible things. Recently, I read The Gallery by John Horne Burns, and this is a marvelous recounting of a soldier's experiences mainly in Naples, in Italy, during the I think the latter part of the war. He's also somewhere else, I think, in Africa or something. And it's a very marvelous book, and it recounts the seamier side of being in the service, the trip to the venereal disease clinic will be something you won't forget. It is probably somewhat fictionalized, but you get the sense that it is very, very true. What else is there that I have read? Fast running through the things I have read. Probably, as far as novels go, the novel that has really changed my perception of the Second World War more than any was Life and Fate by Vasily Grossman. It's a I can't think of the right word now. It's an expansive canvas relating bits and pieces from all over the theater, I guess you could say, the scene, particularly in Russia. And I had grown up thinking that the Second World War was kind of a Roosevelt and Churchill against Hitler sort of thing, and Stalin, etc. The whole might of the Russian army was always glossed over. And when you read this book, you realize that actually that is a very distorted view. Now, this book, this is a Penguin Deluxe edition. At the time, there is a part 1. This is part 2. This is very famous. Part 1 is less so, but part 1 was not available at the time. It is titled Stalingrad. And having read part 2, I'm a bit unsure as to whether I want to read part 1. But it has subsequently been translated. It does not exist in a Penguin Deluxe edition. If it did, I would then be likely to buy it and have it on my long-term TBR. At present, however, it is not. And so unless, I think it's published by New York Review of Books, unless a copy of that happens to fall into my hands by chance, I won't be thinking about it. But an excellent novel. Again, not perhaps for its completeness or cohesion as a novel, but for what it reveals about the war. I guess last of the first-person narratives that I can tell you about or talk about are the books by Primo Levi. I have, if this is a man, it recounts his time in the concentration camp. Auschwitz again, I think. A marvelous book. I've done some videos on it. Actually, no, I read this just before I started recording my reading and trying to really make that a strong focus of my life. Its sequel, The Truce, is one of the first books that I read when I began that process. And so while if this is a man recounts his time in Auschwitz, The Truce recounts his time after the camps were liberated. You had people all across Europe trying to get home, trying to put their lives back together. And of the two, I probably like the truce better. But I've read other things pertaining to what we have called the Holocaust, the German extermination campaign, life in the concentration camps. Can't really think off the top of my head. I remember Terence Dupre, The Survivor, I think it was called, and I think I probably got rid of it because I didn't come across it. That was a pretty good book, but I don't know how much of that sort of thing one needs to read. Well, I always suppose one should read, one needs to read what one feels one needs to read. And I felt that I probably should read The Theory and Practice of Hell, which really talks about how the concentration camp system worked. I think this is also written fairly soon after, so it could well take its place amongst my triad. By the spring of 1945, the Second World War was drawing to a close in Europe. Allied troops were sweeping through Nazi Germany and discovering the atrocities of SS concentration camps. The first to be reached intact was Buchenwald in central Germany. American soldiers, struggling to make sense of the shocking scenes they witnessed inside, asked a group of former inmates to draft a report on the camp. It was led by Eugen Kogan, a German political prisoner who had been an inmate since 1939. The Theory and Practice of Hell is his classic account of life on the inside. So I have not gotten to it. The font is not really big. It's something that I would probably be better off with an ebook of. But again, as I say, in the time allotted to me, I am not sure at this point how much more in depth I need to go on the topic. Well, it says here it was copyright 1950, so I don't know what the story is. I've read the introduction, I'm sure, but I can't recall. And another book, I picked this up at the Holocaust Museum in Skokie a couple of years ago, and I really want to read this. People speak very highly of it. Man's Search for Meaning. He began pondering why some people would survive the horrors of the camps and others wouldn't. And I think the book is the result of his contemplation. So it's another topic that interests me. I am always very interested in the idea of how one survives these sorts of things. I mean, Jan Karski is the survivor par excellence, as is Wladyslaw Szpilman in his own right. Marc, Bloch, alas, did not survive. So that's on my potential TBR. A book which I have looked at, but so long ago that I don't know what I got from it. Years ago, I wanted to write a play about the German general Rommel. And I am going to guess that I picked this up as part of my effort to acclimate myself to the topic. This is by B.H. Little Hart, The German General's Talk. And I know I've read some of these. Yeah, there is a section on Rommel there, so I'm sure I've read that. But I don't know. Part 1, Hitler's Generals, the Suicidal Schism, the Mold of Sect, the Blomberg-Fitz, 3, the Blomberg-Fitz era, 4, the Brauchtisch-Halder era, 5, the Soldier in the Sun, Rommel, 6, Soldiers in the Shadow, and 7, The Old Guard. And it goes on to Preliminaries to War. Well, I don't need to read you all of those. But Through German Eyes. I bet I did not read that, Rommel, because I think I've just read maybe the introduction. That's not uncommon with me to read the introduction to a book, but get no further. But I like this author very much. He wrote a very nice biography of the Roman general Scipio Africanus, I think. Very nice book. And I've read at least something else by him pertaining to strategy or something. His oeuvre is quite vast, and it's all worth looking at, I think. So one day I will get to this. I can't remember. Let's see if I can see what else it has, because I know I've read something else by him. Well, it doesn't. There is no list of his other books. So there's that, however. So we get into some recent acquisitions of things that I hope to read. Again, this is The Diary of a Man in Despair. Somebody on BookTube recently read this and spoke highly of it. I think it was Ann Novella, who has quit making videos for at least a year now, I think. She had a great channel. And let me just read you the back cover of this. Friedrich Reck might seem an unlikely rebel against Nazism, not just a conservative, but a rock-ribbed reactionary. He played the part of a landed gentleman, deplored democracy, and rejected the modern world outright. To Reck, the Nazis were ruthless revolutionaries in Gothic drag, and helpless as he was to counter the spell they had cast on the German people, he felt compelled to record the corruptions of their rule. The result is less a diary than a sequence of stark and astonishing snapshots of life in Germany between 1936 and 1944. We see the Nazis at the peak of power and the murderous panic with which they respond to approaching defeat. Their travesty of traditional folkways in the name of the Volk, and the author's own missed opportunity to shoot Hitler. This riveting book is not only, as Hannah Arendt proclaimed it, one of the most important documents of the Hitler period, but a moving testament of a decent man struggling to do the right thing in a depraved world. Oh, Hannah Arendt, I should say, I think it was last year or the year before that I did read Eichmann in Jerusalem, another good book. I mean, I would easily point a potential reader to Eichmann in Jerusalem before this, although there are similarities. So this is something, it sounds like it would be very appropriate for us today. One is hoping that our current fascists, who appear to be fearful of their own impending defeat, I'm not saying that their defeat is sure by any means, but you have the sense that they fear it. Curtis Yarvin has talked about relocating to another country. Argentina, perhaps, is where some of them will go. But it might give pointers about what to expect with our lives here in the United States as the current regime becomes increasingly frantic and fearful. My earnest hope would be that our current regime collapses faster. In their 9 months so far, they have implemented much faster than anyone might have expected, and one would hope that they when the collapse comes, that it comes much faster. That would spare us from having to evolve our underground organizations into the sophisticated machinery of the Polish underground. This book, again, is really indispensable for understanding that. I think I was reading it at the height of the West's mad war against Al-Qaeda. Al-Qaeda being, again, just a loose coalition of resistance groups and cells. The name Al-Qaeda being sort of an invention of the West, something imposed upon these various resistance fighters in the Arab world. I should say as well, another novel which is here that I has been on my TBR for a long time. Marc at Book Time with Elvis was just talking about it. And I think it's akin to When Time Stopped in some ways as well, because it deals with Berlin. It is based on facts. Again, a couple prints out or writes out little postcards telling the Germans about themselves, so to speak. And my belief is that the protagonist, the true life protagonist, ended up getting executed as well. But I haven't gotten to this as yet, but it is supposed to be a marvelous novel. This clocks in at over 500 pages, so you can see my reluctance to do that. And then the last item which I have to show and tell is a set of books which my channel viewer P. Krabs was reading and speaking very highly of, the Diary of Victor Klemperer. So it comes actually in 3 parts, but the 2 parts that are of most interest to me exist in very marvelous Random House hardbounds, which just fell into my position, so to speak, when I was looking for them. This was not the edition that I wanted, so I Will Bear Witness, I think is the name of the complete diaries. They've been released separately, and it may well be a diary of the Nazi years. And no, I think that they have separate titles when they've been released separately, so to be mindful of that. And I really do want to get to these as well. My trouble is, as with so many people, I am not a fast reader, and right now my focus is completely scattered, if not to say shattered. So I will just have to wait and see. As far as first-person accounts, Diary of a Man in Despair sounds much more approachable because it is only just slightly over 200 pages. Now, I don't know if this gives you any ideas for your own reading. I thought it began just because I wanted to talk about my, as I'm calling it now, my triad. But I must say that these other books have been worthy as well. None of them has been a waste, to be sure. And sad to say, I have a Library of America anthology of World War II poetry written by Americans, of course. But the poetry that came out from the Second World War is not akin to that issuing from the First World War. Plenty of good anthologies exist for that. But I just thought that I would share all of these books with you. Make of them what you will. Thank you for stopping by my channel.